The fluorescent lights of Whitmore Industries cast harsh shadows across the marble floors as Emma Soares pushed her cleaning cart down the empty corridor. It was nearly midnight, and the building had finally fallen silent after another day of corporate warfare. She moved with practiced efficiency, her movements graceful despite the weight of exhaustion that pressed against her shoulders. At 29 years old, Emma had become a ghost in this place, invisible to those who walked these halls during daylight hours. She paused at the large window overlooking the city, allowing herself a moment to breathe. The skyline glittered with possibility, each light representing someone's dream, someone's struggle, someone's triumph. Once, she had been part of that world. Once, her name had meant something in circles that mattered. But that was before everything changed, before she chose a different path, before she became the woman nobody saw. The sound of laughter echoed from around the corner, pulling Emma from her thoughts. She recognized the voices immediately. Bradley Hutchins and his entourage of junior executives, staying late to impress the higher-ups who had already gone home. Emma kept her head down and continued her work, hoping they would pass without notice. Hope was a foolish thing in this building. Well, if it isn't our favorite floor decoration, Bradley's voice dripped with mock charm as he spotted her. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with silver streaking through his dark hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. His expensive suit probably cost more than Emma made in 6 months. Working hard or hardly working, sweetheart? Emma didn't respond, didn't look up. She had learned that engagement only encouraged them. But silence was often interpreted as weakness, and Bradley was a man who fed on weakness. "I asked you a question," he said, stepping closer. The smell of scotch wafted from him, mixed with cologne that probably had some ridiculous name like dominance or power. His colleagues laughed, forming a semicircle around her like wolves cornering prey. "I'm just doing my job, sir," Emma said quietly, her voice steady despite the familiar tightness in her chest. "Your job," Bradley repeated, as if tasting the words. "You know, I was thinking about your job the other day. Must be nice, not having to worry about quarterly reports or board meetings. Just push a mop around, collect a paycheck. Simple life for simple people, right?" Derek Phillips, a younger executive with too much gel in his hair and too little substance in his character, pulled out his phone. "Dude, this would be perfect for the group chat. The guys won't believe this." Emma's hands tightened on the mop handle. "Please don't," she said, finally looking up at them. Her brown eyes, which held depths these men would never understand, met theirs with quiet dignity. "Oh, she speaks in full sentences." Vanessa Cole emerged from the nearby conference room, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. Vanessa was the marketing director, a woman who had clawed her way up by stepping on anyone she deemed beneath her. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer dress spoke of someone who valued appearance above all else. "I didn't know janitors were taught manners. How progressive." The cruelty in her voice was sharper than any of the men's. Emma had noticed that before. Sometimes the worst treatment came from women who saw other women as competition, even when there was no competition to be had. Vanessa saw Emma as beneath her, and that position needed to be reinforced at every opportunity. "Maybe we should help her out," Bradley said, deliberately knocking over his coffee cup. The dark liquid spread across the floor Emma had just cleaned, seeping into the grout between the marble tiles. "Oops, looks like you've got more work to do. Better hop to it." They walked away laughing, their voices fading as they headed toward the elevators. Emma stood frozen for a moment, staring at the spreading stain. This was not the first time, and it would not be the last. She had endured worse in her life. Much worse. This was just another test of patience, another reminder that the world judged people by their circumstances rather than their character. She knelt down with fresh cloths and began cleaning the spill. As she worked, she let her mind drift to other times, other places. She thought about the drafting table that used to sit in her apartment, covered with blueprints and designs. She thought about client meetings where people had hung on her every word, where her opinion had mattered, where she had been seen. She thought about the day everything changed, the phone call that shattered her world and reshaped her priorities. "They give you trouble again?" Emma looked up to see Tyler Grant standing nearby. Tyler was one of the night security guards. a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a military bearing that spoke of discipline and honor. He was one of the few people in the building who treated Emma like a human being. "Nothing I can't handle," Emma said, managing a small smile. "You shouldn't have to handle it at all," Tyler replied, his jaw tight. "I've been working security for 20 years, and I've never seen employees treat someone the way they treat you. It's not right." "The world isn't always right, Tyler. We both know that." He nodded slowly, understanding in his expression. Tyler had his own demons, his own stories of injustice and survival. Perhaps that was why he could see Emma clearly when others only saw a uniform and a job title. "You're better than this place," Tyler said quietly. "I don't know your story, and you don't have to tell me. But I can see it in your eyes. You weren't always pushing a mop, were you?" Emma's smile became sadder. "We're all just trying to survive, Tyler. Sometimes survival looks different than we planned." He wanted to say more, she could tell, but the elevator dinged and he straightened to his post. Emma returned to her cart, her movements automatic as she worked through the building floor by floor. The night stretched ahead of her, long and lonely, filled with the echoes of other people's lives. What Emma didn't know was that someone else was in the building that night. Someone who had arrived through the private entrance and moved through the shadows with purpose. James Whitmore stood in his office on the top floor. But he wasn't focused on the spreadsheets and reports that usually demanded his attention. Instead, he watched the security monitors with growing intensity. James was 38 years old and had built Whitmore Industries from a small tech startup into a billion-dollar empire. He had everything that society said should make a man happy: money, power, influence, respect. But lately, he had felt a growing disconnection from the company he had created. The culture had become toxic, the people cruel, the values corrupted. He had decided to come in unannounced, to see what really happened in his building when people thought no one important was watching. What he saw made his blood run cold. He watched Bradley and his group cornered the janitor. He saw the deliberate spilling of the coffee, heard the mocking laughter through the audio feed. He saw the woman's face as she knelt to clean up the mess, and something in her expression caught his attention. There was no defeat there, no submission. Only patience and a quiet strength that spoke of deeper reserves than these fools could imagine. James leaned forward, studying the woman more carefully. Even in the unflattering uniform, even with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, there was something striking about her. But it wasn't her appearance that captivated him. It was the way she moved, the way she held herself. The intelligence that flickered in her eyes even as she was being humiliated. He made a decision in that moment. He would watch, he would learn, and when the time was right, he would act. But first, he needed to understand the full scope of what was happening in his company. He needed to see who these people really were when they thought no consequences would find them. James switched camera views, following the janitor as she moved through the building. He watched her work with quiet efficiency. Noticed how she straightened a crooked picture frame. How she carefully watered a dying plant someone had abandoned on a desk. Small acts of care in a place that showed her none. Hours passed. The building grew quieter still. And then, as Emma was cleaning the executive floor, she paused at a bookshelf outside one of the offices. James zoomed in on the monitor, watching as she ran her fingers along the spines of books about architecture and design. Her expression transformed, becoming almost wistful, and she pulled out a thick volume on modern, sustainable architecture. She glanced around to make sure she was alone, then opened the book. James watched as she flipped through the pages with obvious familiarity, her fingers tracing diagrams and design principles. This was not casual interest. This was knowledge, expertise, perhaps even passion. Who was this woman? And what circumstances had brought her to pushing a mop in his building? Emma didn't know she was being watched as she allowed herself this moment of connection to her past. She studied a design for a green building, noting the innovations in the water recycling system, the solar panel integration, the way natural light was maximized through strategic window placement. This was her language, the vocabulary she had once spoken fluently. She missed it with an ache that never quite faded. A sound from the elevator made her quickly replace the book and return to her cart. But the moment had been seen, recorded, noted. James sat back in his chair, his mind racing with questions. This woman was not what she appeared to be. There was a story here, a mystery that demanded unraveling. He made another decision. He would meet her, but not as the owner of Whitmore Industries. Not as the billionaire whose name was on the building. He would meet her as just another person working late, as someone who might finally see the woman behind the uniform. James stood and straightened his casual clothing. He had deliberately dressed down tonight, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual tailored suits. He wanted to observe without being observed, to be invisible in his own building. Now that invisibility would serve a different purpose. He took the stairs instead of his private elevator, moving quietly through the building until he found her on the 15th floor. Emma was cleaning the large conference room, humming softly to herself. The sound was surprisingly beautiful, a melody that spoke of hope despite everything. James cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. Emma turned, her expression immediately becoming guarded. She had learned to be cautious around men who appeared when she was alone. "Sorry," James said, holding up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Didn't mean to scare you. I'm working late on a project. Needed a break. Mind if I sit for a minute?" Emma studied him carefully. He didn't look like the usual executives who strutted through the building. There was something different about him, something genuine in his tired eyes. "It's your building," she said simply. "You can sit where you want." "Actually, I'm just a consultant," James lied smoothly. "Working on some analysis for the owner. Burning the midnight oil, as they say." A small smile touched Emma's lips. "Midnight passed 2 hours ago. Now you're burning the 3 a.m. oil." James laughed, surprised by her quick wit. "Fair point. What's your excuse for being here so late?" "This is my shift," Emma said, returning to her cleaning. "The building doesn't clean itself." "No, I suppose it doesn't." James watched her work for a moment, noting the efficiency and care in her movements. "Been doing this long?" "Long enough you like it." Emma paused, considering the question more seriously than he expected. "I like the quiet," she said finally. "I like that I can think while I work. I like that when I finish a floor, I can see the result of my effort." "There's honesty in that." "It's honesty," James repeated. "That's an interesting way to describe it." "Most people don't think about the people who clean up after them," Emma said, her voice neutral, but her meaning clear. "They don't see us as having thoughts or feelings or lives beyond our function. There's a kind of honesty in that, too. It shows you who people really are when they think you don't matter." The words hit James harder than she could know. "And who are they?" he asked quietly. Emma looked at him directly then, really looked at him, and James felt the intensity of her gaze. "That's not for me to say. I'm just here to clean the floors." But they both knew she had said it anyway. And they both knew he had understood. The conversation lingered in James's mind long after that first night. He found himself returning to the building at odd hours. Always under the pretense of work, always dressed casually enough to blend in. And always, eventually, he would find Emma. Their conversations became a ritual. Something he looked forward to more than any board meeting or business deal. Emma remained cautious at first. But gradually, walls began to lower. They talked about books, about the city, about the small observations that filled their respective nights. James was careful never to reveal his true identity, telling himself he needed to understand the situation fully before taking action. But the truth was more complicated. In these moments with Emma, he was just James. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the man whose decisions affected thousands. Just a person connecting with another person? "You read a lot," James observed one night, noticing the small paperback tucked into Emma's cart. "What is it tonight?" "Poetry," Emma said, almost defensively, as if expecting mockery. "Mary Oliver. Do you know her work?" "Tell me you're not busy being born," James quoted softly, "and you are busy dying." Emma's eyes widened with surprise and something else. Recognition, perhaps, or the relief of being understood. "You do know her." "My mother loved poetry," James said, the memory bringing unexpected warmth. "She used to say that poetry was truth dressed in beauty, that it said things plainly that people spent whole lifetimes trying to express. Your mother sounds wise." "She was." Then added quietly, "She died 3 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Emma said. And the sympathy in her voice was genuine, not the automatic platitude people usually offered. Loss changes us in ways we never expect. It does, James agreed, studying her face. You sound like you speak from experience. Emma's expression became distant, her hands stilling on the cleaning cloth she held. My father, she said after a long moment. 2 years ago? He had a stroke, and then complications, and then everything fell apart. He needed constant care, and I was the only one who could provide it. So I did. That must have been difficult. It was necessary, Emma corrected, her voice firm. He spent his whole life taking care of me. When he needed me, I wasn't going to abandon him because it was inconvenient or difficult. Family means something, or it should. James nodded slowly, understanding blooming in his chest. This was part of her story, part of the mystery of how she had ended up here. And after? After, I needed a job that let me rebuild quietly. Something with steady hours, no stress to bring home, no decisions that kept me awake at night. Something honest and simple while I figured out who I was supposed to be now. Emma looked at him directly, a challenge in her eyes. I know what people think. That I failed. That I'm here because I have no other options. But choices aren't always about taking the easiest path. Sometimes they're about taking the path you can survive. I don't think you failed, James said quietly, and he meant it with an intensity that surprised him. I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Emma's breath caught, and for a moment something passed between them. An electric current of understanding, of recognition, of something deeper that neither was quite ready to name. The air felt charged, heavy with possibility. James took a step closer, drawn by an impulse he couldn't quite control. Emma, I need to tell you something. I'm not really just a consultant. I'm actually Emma. You still here? Tyler's voice cut through the moment as the security guard rounded the corner. Oh, sorry. Didn't know you had company. The spell broke. Emma stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. Just finishing up this floor, she said, her voice carefully neutral. James was just leaving. James recognized the dismissal for what it was. Right, good night, Emma. Tyler. He walked away, cursing the interruption, but also recognizing his own cowardice. He had been about to tell her the truth, but part of him was relieved for the interruption. Once she knew who he was, everything would change. These honest conversations, this connection they were building, would be colored by power dynamics and expectations. He wanted to hold on to this purity a little longer, but time was running out. The situation in the building was escalating. The next evening, James arrived to find the executive floor in chaos. A crowd had gathered, and the sound of cruel laughter echoed off the walls. His stomach dropped as he recognized the scene unfolding. Bradley Hutchins stood at the center of a circle, and in the middle, looking small and humiliated, was Emma. Come on, don't be shy, Bradley was saying, his phone held high. We just want to get a picture with our favorite employee. You should be honored. We're finally noticing you. Derek Phillips held what appeared to be a mop head fashioned into a crude crown. We're crowning you Queen of the Custodians. It's a real honor. Vanessa Cole stood to the side, her arms crossed and a smirk on her face. This is social media gold. My followers are going to eat this up. The company culture here is so fun and inclusive. Emma stood frozen, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with suppressed emotion. A crowd of employees had gathered, some laughing, some looking uncomfortable, but saying nothing. Monica Stevens, the HR director, was among them. Her expression troubled, but her mouth firmly closed. That's enough. James's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. The crowd turned, surprised by the authority in the voice of someone they didn't recognize. Bradley's smirk faltered slightly. Who the hell are you? Someone who's seen enough, James said. He's moving through the crowd toward Emma. He positioned himself between her and the others, a physical shield. This ends now. Listen, buddy, Bradley said, his voice taking on a threatening edge. I don't know who you think you are, but this is none of your business. This is just office fun. Emma here doesn't mind, do you, sweetheart? Emma's voice when she spoke was quiet but clear. No, I do mind. I've always minded. But people like you don't care what I think because you've decided I don't matter. Oh, here we go, Vanessa said, rolling her eyes. The victim card. Classic. You want to talk about victims? Emma's voice grew stronger, 2 years of suppressed anger finally breaking through. You mock me because it makes you feel powerful. You humiliate me because it's easier than looking at your own emptiness. You treat me like I'm invisible because acknowledging my humanity would require you to examine your own. Wow. Big words from the janitor. Derek laughed. Did you swallow a dictionary? I have a master's degree in architecture from Cornell, Emma said, her voice steady now, empowered by truth. I've designed buildings that will stand long after all of you are forgotten. I've created spaces that bring beauty and function to people's lives. I chose this job because I needed simplicity while I cared for my dying father, and I stayed because I needed time to heal. But my job doesn't define my worth, and your cruelty says everything about who you are and nothing about who I am. The crowd had gone silent. Phones were slowly lowered. Some faces showed shame, others shock. Bradley's expression cycled through disbelief, embarrassment, and then hardened into something ugly. I don't care if you have 10 degrees, he said, his voice cold. You're a janitor in my building, and you'll show respect to your betters. Your building. James's voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made everyone turn. That's interesting, Bradley, because last I checked, your name wasn't on the deed. What's that supposed to mean? Bradley demanded. James pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card, holding it up for everyone to see. The color drained from Bradley's face as he read the name embossed in silver letters. Owner and CEO, Whitmore Industries. God, someone whispered. The crowd began to back away, realization dawning on face after face. Vanessa's smirk vanished, replaced by naked fear. Derek actually stumbled backward, nearly dropping his phone. Monica Stevens closed her eyes, knowing her complicit silence was about to cost her everything. You're fired, James said to Bradley, his voice calm and final. Clear out your desk tonight. Security will escort you out. Can't be serious, Bradley sputtered. Over this? Over a janitor? Do you know how much money I've made this company? I'm very serious. Derek Phillips, you're fired. Vanessa Cole, you're fired. Every single person who participated in this humiliation, who laughed, who recorded, you're all fired. This is insane, Vanessa protested, her voice rising. We're just joking around. It's not our fault if she can't take a joke. A joke requires all parties to find it funny, James said. What I witnessed was systematic bullying and harassment. What I've been watching for weeks through security footage was a toxic culture of cruelty and contempt. Monica Stevens, you're fired as well. Me. Monica's eyes went wide. But I didn't do anything. Exactly, James said. You're the HR director. Your job is to protect employees from this kind of treatment. Instead, you stood by and watched it happen. Your silence makes you complicit. He turned to address the remaining crowd, his voice carrying authority that came from years of leadership. Let me be very clear about something. This company was built on principles of innovation, integrity, and respect. Somewhere along the way, those principles got lost. Some of you forgot that every person who works here, regardless of their position, deserves dignity. You forgot that character matters more than title, that kindness matters more than power. Rachel Kim, the young intern who had been hovering at the back of the crowd, stepped forward. Her voice shook, but held conviction. Mr. Whitmore, I want to apologize. I saw what was happening, and I didn't say anything. I was scared I'd lose my position, but that's not an excuse. I'm sorry, Emma. Emma looked at the young woman, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes, and nodded slowly. Fear makes cowards of us all sometimes. The question is what we do next. James felt pride surge through him at Emma's grace. Rachel, you can stay. Anyone else who wants to acknowledge their failure and commit to doing better? Speak now. A few people stepped forward, offering apologies, their shame evident. But many others remained silent, their faces hard with resentment. James made note of each one. Security is already preparing severance packages for those being terminated. James continued. You'll be paid through the end of the month, but I want you out of this building tonight. The rest of you will be having mandatory training on workplace respect and dignity, starting tomorrow.
Right.
And if I hear of anyone retaliating against Emma or anyone else who is targeted, you'll join the unemployment line." The crowd dispersed. Slowly, some people crying, others angry, but all of them changed by what they had witnessed. Bradley tried one more time to protest, to threaten legal action. But James simply had security escort him out, his voice echoing in the hallway about lawyers and lawsuits that would never materialize. When the floor finally cleared, only James, Emma, and Tyler remained. Emma stood very still, her arms wrapped around herself, her expression unreadable. "Emma," James began, but she held up a hand. "You knew," she said quietly. "All this time you knew who you were, and you let me think you were just a consultant. I needed to see the truth of what was happening here. I wanted to know you, the real you, without the complications of who I am getting in the way. The complications." Emma's laugh was bitter. "You mean the power imbalance? The fact that you own this building, employ me, have the ability to fire me with a word. Those complications?" "Yes," James said honestly. "I know how it sounds. But everything I felt, everything we talked about, that was real. My feelings for you are real." Emma's eyes widened. "Your feelings? I'm drawn to you, Emma. Your strength, your intelligence, your grace under circumstances that would have broken other people. The way you find beauty in poetry and kindness, even when the world shows you cruelty. I've been looking for something real my entire life, and I found it in late-night conversations with a woman I thought I was protecting. But the truth is, you don't need protection. You never did." "No," Emma agreed, her voice soft. "I don't need protection. But I also don't need a savior or a hero or some billionaire who feels sorry for the poor janitor." "Oh, that's not what this is, isn't it?" Emma challenged. "You fire everyone who wronged me, you reveal my past, you position yourself as my defender. How is that not playing savior?" James took a deep breath, recognizing the truth in her words. "You're right. I handled this wrong. I should have told you who I was from the beginning. Should have asked you what you wanted instead of assuming I knew. But Emma, please understand I didn't defend you because I think you're weak. I defended you because what was happening was wrong and I had the power to stop it. If I had stayed silent when I could have acted, I would have been just as guilty as Monica Stevens." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. "What do you want from me, James?" "I want a chance," he said simply. "A real chance, where we start over with honesty between us. Where you know exactly who I am, and I continue to discover who you are. Where there's no pretense and no games. I want to take you to dinner, not as your employer, but as a man who admires you. I want to know your dreams, your fears, what you think about at 3 a.m. I want to know if you feel even a fraction of what I feel when we talk." Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I'm angry at you," she said, "for the deception, for taking away my choice to handle this my own way, for revealing my past without my permission. I know, you have every right to be." But Emma continued, "I also understand why you did it. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something too. These past weeks, those conversations, they've meant something to me. You've meant something to me." Hope flared in James's chest. "Then let me make it right. Let me prove that I see you as an equal, as someone extraordinary, not as someone I'm rescuing." "How?" Emma asked, vulnerability showing through her strength. "First, by offering you a choice with no strings attached. There's an opening in our architecture division, the lead designer position. It's yours if you want it, with a salary that reflects your education and experience. But if you don't want it, if you want to stay exactly where you are or leave entirely, that's your choice. I won't influence it either way." Emma's breath caught. "You're serious, completely. You're brilliant, Emma. I've seen the way you look at buildings, the way you understand space and design. You belong in that world if you want to be there. But it has to be your choice." "And second?" Emma asked. "Second, I'm asking you on a date. Not as your employer, regardless of what you decide about the job. As James, the man who stays up to late and drinks too much coffee and thinks Mary Oliver understood the world better than most. The man who looks forward to seeing you more than anything else in his life. Say yes or say no, but know that either answer won't affect your job or your standing in this company. Emma looked at him for a long moment, emotions playing across her face. Fear, hope, anger, attraction, all swirling together. Finally, she spoke. I need time, she said, to process all of this, to figure out what I want without the pressure of you standing here looking at me like that. Like what? James asked. Like I'm something precious. It's terrifying. James smiled sadly. You are something precious, Emma. Whether you go out with me or not, whether you take the job or not, that truth remains. Emma nodded slowly. I'll think about it. About all of it. But James, if we do this, if I decide to take a chance on whatever this is between us, it has to be real. No more secrets, no more power plays, no more games. Just two people being honest with each other. Can promise you that, James said solemnly. Tyler, who had been standing quietly in the background, cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I've watched you to circle each other for weeks. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones that scare us most. Emma laughed, some of the tension breaking. When did you become a philosopher, Tyler? 20 years of night shifts gives a man time to think. Tyler replied with a grin. 3 days passed before Emma gave her answer. 3 days during which James threw himself into the massive task of restructuring his company's culture. He brought in consultants, implemented new policies, and conducted personal interviews with every department. The firings had sent shockwaves through Whitmore Industries, and James was determined to ensure the message was clear. Cruelty would not be tolerated. Dignity was non-negotiable. And every employee mattered. The media had gotten wind of the story, of course. Billionaire CEO cleans house after janitor abuse, read one headline. Whitmore Industries fires entire management team, proclaimed another. James declined all interview requests, refusing to turn Emma's pain into publicity. This wasn't about optics or good press. This was about doing what was right. On the third evening, Emma came to his office. She had texted earlier a simple message. We need to talk. James had spent the entire day anxious, preparing himself for rejection while hoping for something more. She knocked on his door precisely at 7. And when he opened it, his breath caught. She wasn't wearing her uniform. Instead, she wore a simple black dress that was elegant in its simplicity. Her hair down around her shoulders, her eyes clear and determined. Hi, she said. Hi, James replied, suddenly feeling like a teenager on his first date. Come in. Emma entered his office, taking in the space with an architect's eye. She walked to the large windows overlooking the city. The same view she had often admired from the corridors below. I've made some decisions, she said without preamble, her back still to him. James's heart hammered. I'm listening. I'm taking the job. The architecture position.
Ow.
She turned to face him. Not because you offered it, but because I'm ready. I've spent 2 years healing, 2 years hiding, 2 years being invisible. I'm done with that now. I'm ready to be seen again. Relief and pride washed through James. You're going to be amazing. I'm also saying yes to dinner, Emma continued. To the date, to exploring whatever this is between us, but on my terms? Name them, James said immediately. We keep it separate from work. At the office, you're my boss. I'm your employee. Professional boundaries, professional behavior. What happens between us personally doesn't affect our working relationship. Agreed. Second, we take it slow. I don't know how to navigate this. A relationship with you? The power dynamics are real, James, no matter how much we pretend otherwise. I need to know that I can trust you, that you'll respect my boundaries, that you'll be honest with me even when it's hard. I will be, James promised. I swear it, Emma. And third, Emma's voice softened. You have to let me be strong. You can't swoop in to save me every time things get difficult. I'm not a damsel in distress. I'm a woman who's fought through hell and came out the other side. If we do this, we do it as equals. James crossed the room to stand before her, careful not to invade her space. Emma Torres, You are the strongest person I know. I don't want to save you. I want to stand beside you. I want to be the person you lean on when you choose to, not because you have to. I want to watch you build incredible things and achieve your dreams. And if I'm very lucky, I want to be part of your life while you do it. Emma's eyes glistened. You're saying all the right things. 'Cause I mean them, James said softly. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. She studied his face, searching for any hint of deception or manipulation. Finding none, she took a small step closer. I'm scared, she admitted. Of this, of you, of how much I already feel. I'm scared too, James confessed. I've built empires, made billion-dollar deals, stood before shareholders and boards without breaking a sweat. But the thought of losing you before I even really have you terrifies me more than any of that. Then I guess we'll be scared together, Emma said. And then she smiled, a real smile that lit up her entire face. James felt his heart skip. Is this the part where I kiss you? This is the part where you take me to dinner, Emma corrected. But her eyes danced with amusement. You promised me a date, remember? I'm holding you to it right now, James asked, surprised. Right now. Unless you have other plans. I would cancel meetings with presidents for this, James said honestly. Let me grab my jacket. They left the office together, and for the first time, Emma walked through the building's main entrance rather than the service door. Employees who were working late stopped and stared, some with curiosity, others with respect. Word had spread about her education, her background, her new position. She was no longer invisible. James had arranged for his car to be brought around. But as they stepped outside, Emma stopped him. Let's walk, she said. It's a beautiful night, and I'd like to talk without the formality of a car service. Walk it is, James agreed. Dismissing his driver, they strolled through the city streets, the evening air, cool and fresh. For a while, they walked in comfortable silence, just enjoying being together without the weight of the building and all its history pressing down on them. Can I ask you something? Emma said eventually. Anything. When did you know? That you had feelings for me, I mean? James considered the question carefully. There wasn't one moment. It was gradual, like watching a sunrise. First, I was just curious about you, intrigued by the mystery. Then I was impressed by your strength and dignity. Then I looked forward to our conversations more than anything else in my day. And then one night, I realized that when I thought about my future, you were in it. That's when I knew. Emma nodded slowly. For me, it was the poetry. When you quoted Mary Oliver, when I realized you actually understood, that you saw the beauty in words the way I do, that's when I started to let my guard down. I'm glad you did, James said. They arrived at a small Italian restaurant. It's a kind of intimate place that tourists never found, but locals cherished. James had called ahead, and they were shown to a quiet corner table with candles and fresh flowers. Over dinner, they talked. Really talked, in a way they hadn't been able to before. Emma told him about her father, about the man who had taught her to see the beauty in buildings, who had encouraged her dreams even when they seemed impossible. She told him about Cornell, about the late nights in the studio, about the joy of seeing her first design become reality. James told her about building his company, about the loneliness that came with success, about losing his mother and realizing that all the money in the world couldn't buy more time with the people you loved. He told her about his fears of becoming disconnected from what mattered, of building something that had forgotten its purpose. Is that why you came to the building that night? Emma asked. Because you felt disconnected? I felt like I had created a monster, James admitted. A place where success was measured only in profits and power, where people forgot to be human. I came to see if my fears were justified, and they were, James agreed. But I also found something unexpected. I found you, Emma smiled. That sounds like a line from a movie. Maybe, but it's also the truth. James reached across the table, his hand palm up, an offering rather than a demand. Emma, I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work. But I believe in taking chances on rare and beautiful things. And you are the rarest, most beautiful thing I've ever found. Emma placed her hand in his, their fingers intertwining. I believe in chances too. But James, you have to understand something. I'm not going to be easy. I have walls, defenses, scars that still hurt. I've been invisible for so long that being seen is almost painful. Then we'll go at your pace, James said. As slow as you need? I'm not going anywhere. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and shared glances. When they finally left the restaurant, the night had grown late and the streets quieter. James walked Emma to her apartment, a modest building in a working-class neighborhood that was a world away from his penthouse. At her door, they faced each other. The moment waited with possibility. "Thank you for tonight," Emma said softly. "For being honest, for being patient, for being you." "Thank you for giving me a chance," James replied. "For trusting me even when I gave you reasons not to." Emma rose on her toes and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. "Good night, James. Good night, Emma." He waited until she was safely inside before walking away. His heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. The weeks that followed were transformative for both of them. Emma threw herself into her new role, her designs quickly gaining recognition within the company. She approached architecture with innovation and passion, her sustainable designs earning praise from clients and colleagues alike. She was brilliant. And watching her flourish was one of James's greatest joys. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully like a garden that needed tending. Dates that stretched into long conversations. Walks through the city where they discovered hidden corners and shared secrets. Gradually, Emma's walls came down, and James proved over and over that he was worthy of the trust she placed in him.